Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to this conference, Cinema in Action, Use Your Voice, Use Your Vote for Democracy, presented by the European Parliament. This conference is organized in the run-up to the European elections, which are set to take place early June of this year, in a couple of weeks. If you have any hesitation on the specific dates, do take a look at all these posters and try and remember it. Just a couple of words. So I'm Pauline Jovial. I'm the Federation of European Screen Directors CEO. I will be your moderator today. And in the next hour, we will explore together the links between cinema, filmmaking, freedom of speech, and European democracy. And we will be starting off with a short clip before welcoming our speakers. You can go ahead with the clip. Thank you.
Moi, je garde ça dans le fond de mon cœur depuis des années. J'y pense tous les matins, mais j'en parle pas. Eh bien, Robin, c'est que je ne devrais pas être ici aujourd'hui. J'aurais dû être morte le 17 juin 1940.
Na 21. jsem měla telefon, že nás obsazuje armáda. Což jsme považovali za něco, že to vůbec není možné. To byl takový šok.
How do you feel about what's happened here in Prague?
We hope that we will have again the freedom and our democracy.
J'avais 11 ans quand la guerre a commencé et 12 quand les soldats sont arrivés. Il y en avait partout. Je descends mes démarches avec mon compotier, j'arrive dans le jardin, ta 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 ta. Maman était tuée sur moi pour me protéger. Vous savez, quand on a 12 ans qu'on se relève avec sa maman morte qui vous protège, on n'oublie pas.
În Timișoara s-a atras în tineret în fața catedralei.
Mijn vader is Auschwitz gestuurd en daar vermoord. En mijn moeder kon mij meegeven in de wetenschap dat ze misschien mij nooit meer terug zou zien. Ik had geen ooms en tantes, dat vond ik wel raar. Ik had ook geen grootouders. Iedereen had grootouders. Ik had niemand.
Non si deve mai dare per scontato la democrazia, ma bisogna sempre sostenerla e proteggerla.
To 17. listopadu, kdy všechno začalo. Byla veliká demonstrace studentů. Policisté napadli demonstranty, zmlátili je. To byl ten moment, kdy začala ta revoluce, takzvaná.
Pēc neatkarības atgūšanas Latvija bija brīva zeme. Cilvēki varēja brīvi izteikt savas domas par demokrātiju.
Ma col muro di Berlino, secondo me, l'emancipazione di tutta l'Europa.
Lieve Suzanne, lieve Suus.
Já jsem ráda, že jsi takový, jaký jsi, a za to tě mám moc ráda.
Je weet, ik ben geboren in een jaar dat de wereld in brand stond. Zoiets bepaalt voor een groot deel je leven. Gelukkig ben jij geboren in een tijd van vrede en welvaart.
Pořád si uvědomovat, že ta svoboda a demokracie tady nebyla vždycky. A že o ní můžeme strašně rychle přijít.
Bisogna lottarla per ottenerla. Bisogna sempre stare vigili e lottare.
Si je peux laisser un message avant de partir, vivez la démocratie. Entendez-vous les uns les autres.
Passt gut auf die Demokratie auf, wenn ich nicht mehr bin.
Je to na mě a je to na nás, na naší generaci. V Evropě.
So let's welcome to the stage of speaker, the Director for Liaison Offices of the European Parliament, Mr. Stephen Clark, who will tell us more about the upcoming election process and give a little bit of context to the short film you have just watched.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. It's quite a moving film, right? And we felt that this is the right way to go at the moment. We have these elections coming. They're on the 9th of June in most countries in Europe, but they're on different dates in a few countries of Europe. But you can check where you live. Every time these elections come, the European Parliament does a campaign about participation. And when we prepared our campaign, we looked at the context that we would be working in. And the context at the moment, I think, is pretty dark in many ways. Democracy seems to be in retreat in many parts of the world. We have what you might call or consider very direct attacks on the very principle of democracy going on all around us. In Ukraine, it's a physical, vicious military attack on a country which aspired to a different kind of future, a European and democratic future. But inside our own European Union, we see attacks on democracy in the form of disinformation, in the form of political extremism, and it's building a sort of a hyper-partisan world where argument stops being reasonable and starts to become even violent, as we've seen recently in one of our member states in Slovakia. So when we were talking about this election and how we're going to talk about it, yes, we will explain the importance of voting, the importance of European laws, the importance of everybody making their political choice, of course. But it's important that in any campaign or any communication action, there is another dimension, and that is an emotional dimension. And in this case, we felt that this cause, this value that we all share, the cause of democracy, is the one that I think is most meaningful to people right now and has the greatest purchase, which is why we made this movie. So the movie is unscripted. We actually set out to make a 30-second TV spot, which was scripted. But the older people and the younger people, it's normally their grandchild, in most cases it's a grandchild, when they came, they were all interviewed separately, individually. And we realized that the really powerful material was there, and there was a real story to tell. And the people who had known a world for various reasons where democracy was absent, they did have a message to pass on to the younger generation. And that's what this movie is all about. And I don't know how you felt about it, but this is something which always gets you every time you see it, even if you've seen it many times. So that's a campaign that we're doing. And we hope that this movie and everything else that we're doing in the campaign, the use your vote or others will decide for you, the messages that we're putting out all the time will spread and will get out there, possibly also with your help. Because that's the germane point. We've realized over time that it's not so much what we do and all the wonderful communication products that we might produce that can really make a difference. What makes a difference is what other people say and what other people do. So not the guy in the suit from Brussels who stands in front of an audience and expresses lots of worthy sentiments, but your friend, the person you're at school with, the member of your family, the celebrity you admire, the content creator you follow on Instagram. All of these people, they have the influence. They are able to get a message across. And I think if we share the message, whatever other causes we may have, and people have all kinds of causes, then if we work together, this central message, the message of democracy and participation, political participation, can get across. And it's in this context that we're here in Cannes today to talk about the very special role that film and the cultural world can play in that effort. I think film is in a uniquely powerful position to communicate emotions, but also to put big issues on the table. So that's what many films do, of course. It's not a question of pushing people in any given direction, but at least of building a sort of a consciousness of the world we live in, of the big questions that face us. And I think if you look around the world and what's happening now, if you look at Ukraine, you look at climate change, you look at energy security, you look at artificial intelligence, you look at all of these big issues that face us, they are self-evidently issues that we can't tackle as individual member states. They are things that need to be tackled at a European level. And people, as they watch their news, more and more are seeing European stories. So I believe that we do have a growing consciousness, as it were, if I can put it this way, of the European dimension. But I think that is something with which film can help enormously, because it can express that dimension in a way that people like me can't, because I'm sort of vested interest, right? But I think there's an opportunity here, if with your help, to get a message across, which could be very important. Yes, I would be very grateful for everybody here, with all the influences that they have, all the networks that they have, could help persuade their friends, their communities, their families to participate in an election, because the more we vote, the stronger our democracy is, and the stronger the message we send to the outside world, which, as I said, is a very complicated place, the stronger that message is too. I mean, there are lots of elections in the world this year. We have ours. They had one in Russia recently, which if you might not want to exactly call that an election. There's one in the United States. I'm not sure we are terribly reassured by that one. There's a lot of this going on. I think it's also an important opportunity for Europe to express itself as a unit within the world and say, this is what we believe in, this is the way we do things. And part of that picture, part of that democracy, and one of the great advocates and channels of our democracy is the world of cinema and TV and culture and entertainment in general. So that's the introductory remark. That's what I'd say. You are powerful people, and we are very interested in how you wield that power, and that power being wielded for good, for the cause of democracy. Not only for these elections, indeed, but in fact well beyond, because we need to think long term. We need to think about engaging our people, especially young people. Again, this is a reason for this film, with their elected representatives, with the bodies that exist, to give them that democratic dimension in the European Union. So that's it. Thank you very much. I hope that's enough, and I'll be around later.
Stephen, thank you. Thank you very much. I think, Stephen, your point about participating in this exercise in democracy that the European elections represent is very well made, very clear to everyone in the room. Thank you very much for that. And we will now hear from an industry perspective, from a well-known figure of the European film industry. Let me now call to the stage the chair of the European Film Academy, Mike Downey. Mike, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Stephen, for those very wise and apposite words. And again, I think you'll all agree with me what an extraordinarily moving film that was, and it underlines many of the things that we want to talk about today. I'm glad, given the turnout here today, I'm sort of glad to see that hopefully European democracy is alive and kicking, or you're all naysayers and have come with tins of tomatoes to throw. But that's okay as well, because it's all about freedom of speech, it's all about democracy, it's all about dialogue. And this is what we want to talk about and emphasize, I think, today. European cinema has a rich history of addressing complex societal issues with depth and artistic honesty, from themes of war and migration and environmental concerns to the fight for human rights and for cultural diversity. European filmmakers have consistently used their craft to provoke thought and inspire thought. Now, as Europe gears up for the European elections in June 2024, we want to turn the spotlight today towards the role of cinema fostering democratic values and engaging European citizen participation. And whilst it's absolutely crucial that we unite film artists, actors, directors on the cusp of these elections, we want to raise a common call for civic engagement to support European democracy, which indeed in these times cannot be taken for granted. We must also look at how we can build our European industry for such future use in elections which are just around the corner. From the cultural and cinema world, it's important for the democratic process. Filmmakers, producers and artists and festivals are indeed now called upon to mobilize support, and we should keep in mind also, as Stephen also pointed out, that the world is also going to be a very different place in 2029 as well. And what happens between now and 2029 is going to be crucial for the future and the very existence of democracy in Europe, I believe. We need to bear in mind to grow collaborative efforts and creative initiatives so that the film industry can serve as a powerful catalyst for driving voter turnout and promoting civic engagement. Now, civic engagement through art, cinema, whatever colour of the political spectrum you're on, can be a powerful tool for democracy. I have first-hand experience of that very recently from a film I was one of the producers of last year. Its title was Green Border, Czerwona Granica, and it was directed by the great Agnieszka Holland, and it was a co-production between that country, Belgium, France, and the Czech Republic, with the support of Eurimage. Shot very much under the radar of the Polish authorities in Poland, and with no public funding from Poland. We weren't stupid enough to apply. It's a very harrowing work, and it centers on how Poland handles and maltreats migrants trying to cross into the border, its border from Belarus. It's a fictional black and white movie. Many of you have probably seen it, and it tracks people from Syria and Afghanistan trying to enter Poland through the dense forests on the Belarus border. And it shows the story of human activists as well who are trying to help, and also the Polish officers who are faced with the moral dilemma of how to deal with the migrants. It's based on the still ongoing efforts of the Belarusian dictator, Lukashenko, to destabilize Poland by allowing people to fly to Minsk with the promise that they can enter the EU. But that promise, as we know, is and was a lie. It's a lethal cat-and-mouse game, and people are taken to the border by Belarusian forces, pushed back by Polish border guards who refuse to accept their asylum claims. That's a violation of international rules. These migrants are then stuck in freezing forests and swamps. Human rights groups say hundreds of people have died since Lukashenko created the crisis in 2021. Green Border premiered in early September at the Venice Film Festival, where it won one of the Lions, a special jury award. And the film opened in Poland on September the 22nd. And it soon clocked up around 4 million euros worth of box office there, which is great for us. And in the 3 weeks prior to the hard-fought Polish election. That was where the fun began. And the power of a work of art, of a diminutive but fearless 75-year-old woman, began to shake the foundations of Polish political establishment. In the febrile pre-election atmosphere, Holland faced personal verbal attacks, physical threats across the board, such as an onslaught of invective from the PIS leader and Poland's de facto ruler, Jarosław Kaczynski. The president, the prime minister, the justice minister. These attacks were so great, we had to have a 24-hour security detail on her while we were releasing the film in Poland. In one of the more caustic attacks, President Andrzej Duda described her film as anti-Polish. He then went on to quote a World War II resistance slogan leveled against Poles who went to see Nazi propaganda films. Only pigs sit in theaters. Most notoriously, the Justice Minister, Zbigniew Ziobro, compared the movie directly to Nazi propaganda, and Holland, whose father is Jewish and many of whose family perished in the Holocaust, has since sued the minister. The minister declared, and she sued the minister and won. And the minister declared after that that it's more important how he is judged by God than by a court, which clearly demonstrates the importance of the democratic process in the realm of the living. Green Border, then, was an attempt to fill the narrative space that neither the political opposition in Poland nor the Polish Catholic Church have taken responsibility for. Of course, we must be careful when we say and we analyse how important a film can be in big political terms, especially about the migration debate, which is such a big debate in Poland and in Europe. But I'm convinced that as cinema, as a work of art, it could inform and change the minds of those who are either uninformed or undecided, or who get their information from pro-government sources only. In any case, in the run-up to the election on October the 15th, over 750,000 viewers had voted with their feet and gone to see the film, despite the official government warning, a government health warning that was issued against the film to precede it in the cinemas. That move was criticised by the Polish PO party, by Donald Tusk, who said that it was not the job of governments to review films and that the decision discredited the authorities and not the film. And whilst the timing of the release of the film in the run-up to the election was entirely coincidental, the power of this engaged and committed work, I believe, ignited a huge national debate. And this is the power of film. This is what film can do. It ignited this national debate, not only with regard to the Polish government's response to the Belarus border crisis, but also shed light on the fundamental nature of the Polish regime, of the then Polish regime, and its leaders. But to say that Green Border changed the direction or the result of the Polish general election, of course, would be an exaggeration. To surmise that it made a contribution to the fact that the highest ever recorded turnout in an election in Poland of 74.4% would be a fair comment, I think. And to conclude that the public reaction to the establishment's persecution and relentless vilification of an innocent septuagenarian artist going about her business changed some minds about those in government would also not be an exaggeration. But this is how our crucial role as artists and commentators played out. Yes, of course, I believe we made a film that for sure made a political point, but in addition and over and above, the key thing was to demonstrate the moral crisis that we suffer from, and which is the result of the perennial issue of this endless story of migration, which isn't going to go away wherever. So at the heart of what we do as filmmakers, I think, lies the recognition that democracy thrives when its citizens are engaged and empowered, that the European Parliament, as the legislative body, a legislative body that represents over 500 million Europeans, plays a pivotal role in shaping policies that impact daily lives, and from cultural preservation to fostering artistic freedom, freedom of expression, etc. But using our industry, our people, and our talent to unite film artists, actors and directors on the eve of the European election, to raise a common call for civic engagement, to support European democracy, democracy that can't be taken for granted, will help to defend our right to have all of the above rights defended and our hard-earned European freedoms consolidated. I know that I can speak for the European Film Academy as its long-standing chair and as the honorary president of the influential Lux Prize of the Parliament, when I say genuinely I believe that through collaborative efforts and creative initiatives, the film industry can serve as a powerful catalyst for driving voter turnout and promoting civil engagement, not just in the next month, though, but in the next 5 years. While the rising tide of populism shows in Europe, it will become an even more acute period to explore cinema and culture and how it can reinforce democratic engagement, bridge societal divides, and foster a sense of collective responsibility. My aim since becoming a board member 2 decades ago of the European Film Academy and spending the last 12 years either as its chair or its deputy has been to make the organisation far more than an organiser of awards ceremony, rather a place for inspiration to activism in cinema. Film is essential to a healthy and democratic society. That's why it's feared by autocrats. Filmmaking is a form that allows us to walk in each other's shoes, to build a sense of shared humanity, and it gives voice to the marginalized and the scorned. And it also strives to hold those in power to account. And if cinema is our most important art form, I would argue that feature and documentary films are both its beating heart and its conscience. They hold a mirror to our society, and they hold our conscience to account. It's more important than ever that we come together and speak up for and support and utilize this art form and these artists here and around the world who bring us these essential stories. There's a strong sense of solidarity amongst us in the European Film Academy and in the European film industry, a sense of social and political responsibility that we all share and we all practice. And what better way to use it than in the service of a democratic ideal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for these sobering and yet somehow inspiring words. And it really feels like the perfect segue to our panel discussion on the struggle for democracy and freedom of expression. And we will now welcome to the stage our three distinguished speakers that I will call one after the other, and they're more than welcome to meet me here. Denis Ivanov, who's a producer, distributor, and European Film Academy board member. Kirsty Moe. Yeah, this feels very award-like, so for some reason, just take a seat, welcome the cheer. Kirsty Moe, Vice President of EFEDS, the European Film Agency Directors Association, and CEO of the Norwegian Film Institutes. And Eva Bocinska, producer of Oscar winner 2024, The Zone of Interest, and of Oscar and Lux Prize winner 2014, Ida, as well as Cold War. Welcome to the three of you for what promises to be an inspiring conversation, hopefully, despite the seriousness of the tone. We all know, and that's kind of why everybody is joining this festival and working in this industry, I think, that cinema is a very vivacious kind of storytelling, and it does bring a mirror to society, as Mike was very eloquently putting, sometimes in a controversial way. And that sort of, when you see the title of this conference, it sort of triggers a fairly simple question, which may seem evident but might not be, on the role that cinema and filmmaking play in today's European democracy. And I think on a very general idea, which hopefully will trigger some wider thoughts, we will start with you, Eva. On your perspective as a Polish producer, where do you see the interaction between cinema, filmmaking, and European democracy, and the state of this relationship?
I think, that the films which I make, and it's always very conscious decision what I want to make this film, not the other. I think it can show the path I go, and I really believe that cinema, I'm not naive anymore that cinema, the film, can change the world as such, but I truly believe, honestly believe, that it, as Mike said, it can trigger the conversation, it can trigger the discussion, it can trigger the interest and curiosity, and that's what is very important. And it can trigger asking questions, questioning things, questioning information we are given, questioning the other visions of the world than our vision, and trying to find the way, trying to ground, to talk about it, why we are different, why, so many people, I'm talking about the, quite recent experience my country was going through, why there are people who think differently than us, which we cannot understand, because what they believe in, autocracy, and, the very governments which limit our human rights. That's what the cinema should do, and I believe many films we are doing do that. So I think this is the link, and we should definitely continue and definitely make films. Of course we should make comedies, of course we should make films which are a very nice and clever entertainment, but also the films which are statements, democratic kind of political statements should be made. Because this is, I think, one of the ways, one of the paths we can really, work for democracy, not fight for democracy, not we struggle, but work for democracy. It's a hard work. I don't know if because I can talk and talk and talk, because for me it's a very emotional subject, but I think I should leave the floor for others, my colleagues. So.
As a start, that sounds really good, but I find your point about filmmaking and cinema having the power to foster critical thinking and curiosity at the same time very interesting, and indeed if that can be possible between cultures that are still quite different in Europe from one to the other, between member states and beyond, that's quite a fundamental role that cinema does play in that context.
Yeah, I truly believe in that.
Great. All right. Well, turning to you, Kirsty, then. I'm very sorry because I'm pretty sure that I'm butchering your name, and this is not the way to pronounce it, so you will forgive me, I hope.
Not offended.
Okay, great. As a film agency representative, where do you see the articulation between film policies, freedom of expression, and European democracy?
To us, we are gathering in 37 countries in EFAD, so we are quite a broad representation throughout Europe. And for us, the job is to support and promote European films in all their diversity. And we do in implementing all I would like to kind of go through four core democratic values that we all have in common, actually. And the first and most important, I would say, is the freedom of speech and artistic freedom. So to me, it's a matter of great urgency to defend artistic freedom for filmmakers, and I would also add festivals and artists. So we encourage filmmakers across Europe to engage with society and tell stories that entertain and provoke, but also entertain. I agree with you. We have to do both. That make audiences think and reflect and look around them and remind them that what they value in society cannot be taken for granted. And I will also say that this also applies for the programmers in festivals. And number two is the cultural diversity. Supporting diverse artistic voices, different stories, including the difficult ones, from different cultures and languages. Films that engage with contemporary issues, corruption, inequality, or the climate crisis, can play a critical role in mobilizing citizens. European cinema has shown that it can not only raise awareness, but also encourage viewers to question, to discuss, and ultimately to act. This is the essence of democracy, an informed and engaged audience that does not just passively accept, but actively participates in shaping the future. And then we have the third that we call representation, or maybe you would prefer relevance. And that is actually that everyone across Europe should see themselves in the stories we tell and on the screens they use. And last, I would like to name the word solidarity. That is a value that we cherish as film agencies, and solidarity and support to filmmakers in danger. And sitting with you here, I would like to be specific about one initiative that we have brought from EFAD. Last year, we started the European Solidarity Fund for Ukrainian films, we enable filmmakers and producers all over Europe to co-produce with the Ukrainian colleagues, funding and enabling Ukrainian works of cinema. And since the launch last year, we have supported 29 projects in development and finalization. And I think that's a very concrete example on how we actually engage in bringing your stories to the screen and to the audience also in difficult times.
Thanks, Kirsty, for that. It's really interesting indeed that you point out very clearly to the fact that if cultural diversity does not exist, then the entire role that cinema is supposed to play in this democratic European Union does not happen. So indeed the position of the film agencies in that sense is quite essential in allowing for cultural diversity for the audiovisual sector to be a reality in today's Europe. Now moving to you, Dennis, as a Ukrainian producer and distributor, what's your take on the interplay between cinema, filmmaking and democratic values? Because you have
well, I know,
quite the perspective.
I represent the country where our president was a cinema actor and the country is ruled by producers, in the beginning. So I would say this is very important, but also I think it's very important in modern world, cinema is not the only audiovisual media, let's say. And I totally agree with Eva that cinema is something that could reflect the world and explain the world better than in Wikipedia page or in the news. And reason we wouldn't know anything about Holocaust if there wouldn't be so many good films about it. And the same thing is what is going with the war. And if it would be not reflected after the war what happened, this war would be forgotten and the history will repeat itself. Also, I would say that we are probably the country that are paying the most expensive price for democracy now, paying it with the lives of our soldiers just to protect our system, and I would say that it's a huge privilege to live in democratic country and to have at least electoral democracy, but it's also very important that democracy is not only go and tick in ballots in the during the election. It's also to be active to protect it. I totally agree with the conclusions that characters in the film that we just seen said, that it's important to, democracy is not something that's granted to you. You need to protect it through, between the elections as well. And we see what happened if it's not like that. We have the situation in Russia where a lot of film people were seduced by power because the subsidies that the power is given to the filmmakers as goes through the system, through the government, and because the people were remaining silent and not resisting. For many years we are facing one of the big catastrophe in our country, and I think in whole Europe now. Also, I wanted to say that there are filmmakers, usually the people who are very important opinion makers in their country. And if it wouldn't be filmmakers like Oleg Sentsov, for example, director who really paid the huge price for his values. Like we're saying, the values, it's not that you are going to sell expensive, it's something that you are going to pay a lot. And I think the easiest thing with elections is to go vote and engage the people to vote, and also not to be sleepy between the elections, because this is the value is like air. You started to understand how important it is when you don't have it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Denis. I think indeed the points you make are quite essential, and it's both, for me, what seems really striking in what you're saying is that this notion that cinema brings a mirror to society in historic times, like the situation that Ukrainians are facing today, is super essential in building the memory of tomorrow and the understanding of events. So indeed, filmmaking has a role to play in there. And also the point you're making about the the almost moral element of benefiting from public funding and actually exercising filmmaking feels quite strong to me, because you're almost talking about ethics here in the ability for filmmakers to shape the opinion, right?
Yes, absolutely, because a lot of if there will be no democracy, the democratic values will also collapse on the level of the film funds, and you could face exactly the situation that you have in autocracies in Europe, when the talents are not supported, but supported the people who are more close to power, or support the power, support the government, but not the talents. And I think it's very important. Democracy, it's a key instrument to keep the talents important in the society and to give them the voice, because cinema needs resources, and most of the resources are controlled by the different governments and different organizations that are close to governments.
Well, thanks for that. It was very interesting. Eva, in your experience navigating this world of ethics and necessary support, because indeed without public support you do not find yourself with a similar picture in terms of cultural diversity in Europe. Do you have any particular thoughts on how to navigate all of this? And have you had experience in thinking about these connections?
You know, this is really, I can refer to Poland, what was going in October, before October, how we were, you know, really trying to get together to, you know, kick out the regime government and have a new one. And of course, it was you know, a win. We have a democratic government. But what I wanted to say, it was also because I was a part of a campaign. We wanted to bring to the voting women and young people. And there was a campaign saying 7 million women said their voice is not important. Their voice will not change anything, the election. When one person says, oh, my voice doesn't really count, things will happen without me. But when you realize that there is 7 million people saying that it's something. And this was a campaign, these were short films and, you know, clips. And then really we can say that, you know, this huge number of people which came to vote were also women. I truly believe that, you know, those elections in Poland, where the winners were women and young people. So this is also what you have to do, and I want to refer to what Dennis said. You know, you have to work between the elections. It's not just, you know, clicking on the vote. It's also the Polish example. You know, just after recently we had you know, elections to the local governments, and so all of a sudden, you know, the number of people coming to vote was much smaller. And once of the sudden, you know, the local governments, there was not such a huge win. You know, we still are sharing the local governments between, you know, democratic governments and also the people who belong to the, you know, to, let's call it, regime government. So this is also something you cannot just say, okay, we win and now let the government do things. We should be very active as filmmakers, but, you know, talking people that, you know, it depends on them. It depends on work in their, you know, communities and things coming from down to up. We cannot, you know, the government, even the best ones in the world, won't do things for us only. We have to be very active. We have to work. And yes, you know, to be able to make films, we need funds. And this is also very important that the funds are democratic. I'm not saying that the funds should not give money for the film for the person who belongs to another party, which it shows, you know, some stories which make people again question the world, ask questions and trigger the discussions. So this is democracy. You know, in my country, the society is very polarized. It's still now, you know, people don't talk to each other. People are fighting, and people. So that's what happens. You know, this is what the regimes create. The hate, you know, that made people hate each other, And this is this is the straight path really to the end of democracy and to the wars. That's the straight path. So this is really something, it's a very wide subject. As I said, it's very emotional for me. But definitely, you know, cinema and what we, you know, I'm quite a well-known person in my country. So that's, I feel responsible, and that's my duty to speak up and say things, you know. Many people nowadays don't want to do it because they are just afraid, even of being, you know, pointed fingers at. You know, they just. I was talking to Sandra Hiller, you know, the protagonist of The Zone of Interest, and she was meeting with the films with the young people, with the students, and the conversations were, you know, she was crying after that. She said those people are, you know, when they start and raise their voices, you know, their friends are mocking them, saying this is when you use the word democracy, freedom, you know, this is loving your country and so on, you are being mocked. So this is also, that is something we have to work on, you know, through the films as well.
I find it really interesting that you point to two things that chime with what was said before. One has to do with the ethics of filmmaking again, and this notion that you cannot sleepwalk into the world we live in, and that you have to take your part as a storyteller for the big screen and touching the audience. But you're also making a very pragmatic link between a well-functioning democracy and a well-functioning system that allows for cultural diversity to exist by public funding. And I find that really interesting, because it means that in a way, going to vote when you are an industry stakeholder or a professional in the sector is not just a civil rights exercise. It goes beyond that.
Absolutely. Yes, and we have to really make sure that it goes beyond that. And, you know, this is really, and again, I'll refer to the zone of interest, you know, and I think that we put, it's a warning for us, for all the filmmakers, it was a warning. We put the mirror in front of all of us saying, you know, when you look at Rudolf Hess, he is just a normal person, you know, working for the corporation, loving his family. You know, this is really trying to prove that he's the best in what he's doing into his superiors. And when you look at him like that, he said, okay, he can be one of us. You know, this is all of us, many of us are working in the corporate systems and, you know, do that. And this is really like you know, try to dehumanize, you know, another side, the people who you think are different. You try to dehumanize them so that it's easy for you to just, you know, kill them and mock them, and, you know, because you know, somebody told you they are worse than you are. So this is all this propaganda, all these voices. We have to be very, very careful. And of course, you know, we have our comforts, you know, we're living in the democratic countries. We have our comforts. We have comfortable lives. And we are very much afraid of losing our comforts. That's why sometimes we close our eyes at what is going on. And sometimes, as Danny said, you have to follow your values, but you have to be sure of them, and saying, okay, I may lose my comfort. I may lose whatever I was accumulating for, let's say, 20, 30, 50 years of my life, but that is something which I should do, because, yeah, I believe in that.
So in a way, this is about not letting fear guide you, and being true to your values in many ways, in projecting in the future, whatever it may be. You know, I'm just going to go to Kirsty for a second. So in terms of projecting yourself in the perspective of this relationship between supporting filmmaking and continuing to allow for this diversity to exist to the screen, do you have any thoughts about how to project that in the long-term future beyond this particular election?
Yes, but I was thinking particularly about what Eva says, because you take personal risk, and as you say, you're a well-known person, so the risk might be lower for you, but you're also asking everyone else to go out and take the fight. And I think for us as film agencies, it's our job to protect and facilitate for the creators and the producers to actually be able to take that fight. And we all have to remember that without the European democracy, there won't be any European cinema, and maybe also vice versa. So what we can do is to enable the individuals that has to take the fight, because we don't make films, we support them. But we have to...
We need you.
You need us, and we need you. And our job is to facilitate and protect you and make it possible to tell these stories so that we can all together contribute to the democracy and to the cinema and the connection between the two of them. And I think the forthcoming election, I mean, 500 million Europeans going to vote together, it's a manifestation of democracy, and it's fantastic. And some of us are not members of the European Union. I come from Norway myself, and because of our democratic processes, we are not members. But the decisions made by the EU is still affecting us very deeply. So I think for us as EFAD and representing the film agencies, it's really important for us to show that this connection and our role in it, we are taking it very seriously, and we are also, I have to say, very honored to be here with you too today.
Well, I think it's really great that you have already in mind the fact that these are, not unique times in history, but peculiar time in history, and the fact that you have a bit of situation awareness in that sense is probably critical in a way for whatever happens next to Europe and its democracy. And as I'm conscious that time is running, Dennis, do you have particular thoughts on the, let's say, longer-term future?
Well, I wanted to say Ukraine is also not voting the elections, but we are very depending on these elections, and for us it's literally the question of life and death, and without the support in the first year without the creation of Solidarity Fund, without so many solidarity from our European colleagues, believe me, we wouldn't stand so long. It was so important for us, and it is still important because our talents are keeping their professions because of the small supports and small gests of solidarity. So I think we are not responsible for this election, but believe me, the people who will vote, they will be responsible not only for their countries, but also in the situation in the whole world. If I may say, it's not too pathetic for us, because we are thinking that what is happening in Ukraine, this is not a regional conflict. This is something that's affecting a lot of countries, and could be the fire that could get bigger. So thank you so much for inviting so great people to this panel, and I think we are like-minded in a way.
But I think you're also talking about, in a way, situation awareness for the European citizens in this room, for example, who will hopefully go to vote in 2 weeks. That's also almost beyond the right that you have to exercise this civil duty. You also have, in a way, responsibility in what's happening in our common destiny. So that's quite a powerful message, I think, Dennis.
Yes, and I also wanted to add that it's sometimes the elections, it's like to vote against somebody, but for me it was always to build the bridges with the people, and the election is also very important to build these bridges, for the next 5 years. And I think we are responsible for our institutions. We are responsible to the life that we will have in 5 years. So I hope election will go and right people will win.
Well, thanks for that. I think it says everything about how exercising a civil right can have a tremendous impact in certain historic times that I'm sure we find ourselves into without really fully understanding it sometimes, but that's still the same. You have one power, and that's to use your vote, so that's quite essential. I'm afraid that's kind of all the time we have. I feel like we could go on for quite some time, but I want to really warmly thank you, the three of you, for tackling such a big topic in an earnest way. And I think I will now release you, and we can thank our panelists. Thank you so much. And giving them a second to get off the stage, we will now welcome our closing speaker for a final intervention, award-winning actress, playwright and director Alina Serben. Alina, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alina, and it's quite cynical for me to be in this position of speaking about the votes. I have to be first honest, okay? I was not interested in this. When some friends of mine were just watching the news, I was like, this is so boring. This was me in my 20s, let's say. But in my 20s, I was starting my storytelling career. I call myself a storyteller. I use theater and film in order to fight Roma discrimination. I am a Roma woman. Very seldom we have Roma women in this space, in spaces with a microphone, to tell people what we think, and even more encourage them to vote. Wow, this is quite historical, so thank you very much for giving me the platform. So what I would say is that I was not really interested in this because I thought I don't get ever to decide. I come from a family of Roma that were previously enslaved. For more than 500 years, yes, this is a historical information that many people don't know. Roma people have been enslaved for more than 500 years in the Romanian countries. And we have been free for just 160 years ago, we were being free. But after the so-called abolition of slavery, communism happened, where we were not allowed to be Roma. You were not allowed to call yourself another ethnic minority. So you had to be Romanian, meaning we had to give up our language, our traditional outfit. So you basically had to forget you are Roma. And a part of my family did that, and they integrated, and a part of my family didn't, the part of my father's side, where actually when we lost our house due to legislations, evacuations, which is somebody signs and a family gets evacuated. When we were evacuated from my house when I was 8, I end up living with my father's family. Those who didn't comply with the communism rules of not being Roma, they stick to being Roma. They still spoke their language, but unfortunately, they were poor, if I can say, as hell. I end up living in a house made of manure, near rats, being so ashamed of everything I was. And the discrimination outside was telling me that I don't deserve, I'm not of any value as a person. So here I was trying to survive first. How could I think of voting when I'm barely surviving? You know, and this is actually the problem. Who goes to vote is actually people that can have the time to reflect. They are not hungry. They have electricity. They have hot water, right? They don't think of these basic needs. But unfortunately, the people who really go to vote, I don't want to sound discriminative or something, but are the people that have very far-right type of thinking. And they will get to decide for us. And going back to my own personal story, we became Roma, legislatively wise, like law-wise, only 34 years ago. In the 90s, finally, they decided, oh, you can be Roma. It's okay. You can. that means still living in poverty, being discriminated, but at least we were Roma for only 34 years ago, so we're very young. But obviously in European countries, Roma people have been lived for centuries. Even though we don't know them, we have lived amongst non-Roma for so many centuries. But still, in the European Union, when we call for action for Ukraine solidarity, right? We all know this, and we were all trying to speak about Ukraine solidarity. But somehow, Ukrainian Roma fell again in the in this big hole of you're not white, you don't look like us. So solidarity towards the Ukrainian Roma was not the same because, unfortunately, they didn't look like us. And again, even I today, as a filmmaker, actress, director, when I speak about how important it is to see also Roma people as humans, they tend to add, yeah, but you're still living in peace, forgetting about the Ukrainian Roma. You're still, you didn't reach the suffering point that makes you hot for us. And you understand what I mean. So here I am today in, let's say, a position power for 5 minutes, and I can use this time to say that understanding that legislations are impacting our lives every day, from the fact that my ancestors were slaves and then they were not allowed to be their own ethnic background, to today when either we cannot even choose for our own bodies as women in some countries, to the fact that our food, the way where we sleep, our private security is dictated by legislations. So whether we don't decide to use our right to vote, legislations will always impact our lives. It's a pity not to be part of this decision and let other people decide for us. And again, going back to who actually goes to vote, these are not people that you could say are representing you or represents this room. Usually, as I said, who goes are people who are populists and mostly towards the right. And we will all say, but this is not representing my views. I'm a kind person. I want diversity around me. I want peace. But still, we don't go to vote. So, going back to my own ignorance, to the person I've been, here I am today saying that maybe if I can go back to my family, the same people that unfortunately still live today without electricity, without the hot water I used to pray for when I was in my teenagehood, and no teenager should pray for decent living conditions, I myself would make this promise that I will go to my family, both sides of my family, the ones that, let's say, made it and the ones that didn't made it, to convince them that their vote matters, that if they don't go to vote, unfortunately, they will let other people again decide for us, like 500 years ago to this present. I hope this helps, and I hope when you see people as people and not as labels, we will then think that I didn't vote for a party. No, I'm not voting for a specific party per se. I'm voting for my mom. I'm voting for my sisters. I'm voting for my brothers. I'm voting, obviously, for the future that I might not be part of. But at least I did my very, very small part in it. So thank you very much. I hope we all will celebrate in 5 years something that we all put together, as if every action, if just to imagine that if everybody here takes 5 friends and goes to the vote that day, we will increase the numbers. It might sound very idealistic and pinky, but why not? Why not try this challenge? So I challenge you to take 5 friends and go to vote. I'm going to bring both sides of the family. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alina. And on these very powerful words, let's build something early June from 6 to 9. And thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Have a lovely rest of the day. Bye.